I am joined by Robert Griffin III, James White, Field Yates Meanekeims. All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by PrizePicks, powered by GameTime, powered by the Patriots bye week. The Patriots got nothing going on this week, but like I just said in the several videos we just recorded in Gillette Stadium about an hour ago, we are not off this week. We are still here pumping out some Patriots content. So we're bringing you a mailbag episode of the podcast today. Ton of questions over on Twitter, so we're going to get to as many as them as possible. We'll try and go quick, rapid fire. We only have about an hour here to get this done, maybe probably a little less. We'll see how it goes. But if you do have questions, throw them in the chat. We'll try and get to those ones as well. Shout out Old Man Mobby. Always shows up, and every time we go live, he always asks us how we're doing. We appreciate it. Thanks for joining in, even on this Friday. So we're going to get to the mailbag. We're going to get to the Patriots questions. But before we do, I wanted to touch on one thing, some Patriots adjacent news in the world of football, and that is our old friend Bill Belichick taking an interview with the University of North Carolina. It was first reported by Inside Carolina, a local Chapel Hill blog type of website, which I think is super cool that they were the first to get the news. That's I think about that with Boston College, right? With Kevin Stone, who we work with down there. That's like him breaking that, which I would love that for him around BC eventually. But that's what this felt like with this Inside Carolina team. It ends up being confirmed by, Sports Illustrated, Albert Breer has it, all the big guys. It ends up going through ESPN, FAML, they all get it. And so it is true. It is real. Bill Belichick did interview with the UNC Tar Heels for the head coaching position. So, Taylor, what are your thoughts on this? Is he going to go to college? Can he handle this college game? Recruiting, NIL, flying across the country, being in people's living rooms, trying to get them to play for the Tar Heels. What do you make of it? What are your thoughts on Bill potentially going to college?
It's interesting because it's a very different lifestyle. College football is a different sport, you could say, because of the field dimensions and the strategies and just how, obviously in college, I think Alex said this in one of our shows, the head coach is pretty much like the quarterback in the NFL. So very different type of ecosystem. One thing I know that Albert Breer mentioned when he was talking about it was the fact that because of NIL, it's a lot more similar to the NFL and free agency because it's a bit more of a bidding war than it is just, we're a great program, you're going to want to come and win with us. It's like, yeah, all right, but how much am I making at the same time? And obviously, Belichick having been a GM, the kind of control you have in a college system does make sense for him. Now, at the same time, you're dealing with children. You're like the recruiting is very different.
He's kind of used to that right now. Just saying, with his girlfriend. But I digress.
Give him some tips. Maybe we should give him some tips. Honestly, that's why he was like, you know what? I could do this. I can talk to college kids. I have so many college friends now. Let me just get the college game. But yeah, also one thing, unless he doesn't get an NFL gig, I don't see why he'd want to go to college because he's chasing the all-time wins record for the NFL, not for football overall. So I don't know how much incentive he'd have there if he did have the opportunity for an NFL job. But beyond that, I don't know, man. It just seems like a weird fit. I think it also would just be hilarious objectively if, we get or the Patriots get Drake May from UNC and then Bill Belichick ends up going to UNC and, filling Mac Brown's place. That would be pretty crazy. But yeah, it was a weird report. It would just be such bizarro land because Bill spent his entire life in the NFL and obviously has a lot of respect for college programs and has been around college football, but never been in charge. So I don't know. It seemed like a long shot to me. But again, if there isn't an NFL situation that he loves, he loves coaching, bottom line. So, if he had an opportunity, and I'm sure he wouldn't want to just waste their time. And I'm sure the Chapel Hill doesn't want to waste his time either. So interesting, but I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, it is kind of bizarre. There's so many layers to it. First, and I know I just gave Inside Carolina credit on it, but the day before I was actually I was listening to Felger and Maz, and Tony Maz brought up that he had heard that Bill was sniffing around the UNC job the day before this broke, and I heard that. I was like, what does Maz know? Is he just kind of throwing stuff against the wall? They do that on that show. They always kind of have secret, brown check marks, they call them. They kind of get information, but he ended up having it too. So when I heard it yesterday, or 2 days ago at this point, I was like, is he really going to do that? Like, what does college bring to him? Whatever. And then it comes out and it's like, oh shit, this is kind of real. And you wonder, he wants the wins record. Is he going to have interest in the league? Where last year he had one team in Atlanta actually call and have an interview. And they did not give him all the power. He wants to be the GM. He wants to have full control of personnel. And a lot of teams don't want to give that. A lot of teams like the head coach, general manager tandem, and Bill is that in one person in the NFL, where you mentioned it, in college, you kind of oversee everything and you have the ability. Now a lot of teams, Andrew Luck is now the general manager of Stanford. Like Woj left the NBA world to go be the general manager of St. Bonaventure's basketball. Like they're bringing in guys to oversee. What's his name on New England staff now? Highsmith was the GM for Miami 2 years ago. So like a lot of teams are doing this. What? Did something happen?
I think news might have broken, or we're just late on it. Andrew De Silva just tagged me in something. I'm sorry to cut you off, but
That's okay.
Ali Connolly of Read Optional reported that per sources, I'm told Bill Belichick's negotiations with North Carolina include a guarantee that Stephen Belichick will be named the school's head coach in waiting. UNC is open to that guarantee. Discussions are not a bid to gain leverage for NFL offers, and BB is open to the move. Any potential staff would include Matt Patricia, Ben McDaniels, the Texans passing game coordinator, Josh McDaniels, as well as a sitting college GM who would handle general operations, NIL recruiting, etc. So no one on the Patriots staff. That's notable because I know that people have talked about Brian Belichick maybe leaving, Mike Pellegrino. I've been saying that, like, obviously now that Steven is there, that makes a little more sense because it didn't make sense for the assistants to leave with Bill to be somewhere for like 2 years, and I know that was one thing that was potentially standing in the way for Bill. So not just the 2 years, it's you inherit the Belichick's, I guess. And then Belichick's preference, when I told, not me, Ali Connolly, remains the NFL, but the landscape is already considered thin based on feedback for the league. Moving to college with a guarantee for his son will overrule waiting in the NFL carousel. Very interesting.
That is very interesting. And back to the rumblings and the brown check marks. Like yesterday, Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports just threw out into the ether on Twitter, I wonder if this has anything to do with Steve coming along and being the next head coach. Now, I don't know if he knew anything. I don't know if that was just an idea and now it's becoming real, but that would make a lot more sense for Bill to go and lay the foundation. And then because Steve's Washington defense was really good this year. Like now, is he head coach material? I wonder. Like he didn't even run meetings because Gerard ran the meetings. He's more of the X's and O's guy. So that would be interesting. But I mean, if you put a foundation around him, Bill can kind of teach him the way. That is an interesting wrinkle, and that would make it more likely for me to think that he would actually take the job. Wow, that's fascinating. Thanks for bringing that up, Andrew, to tag us in that or tag Taylor in that and kind of get that going. So we'll see what happens. There's obviously the idea of him. I just mentioned he wanted to he interviewed with Atlanta. They didn't want to give him the personnel control. They had like Terry Fontenot and they have like different presidents, and obviously the GM in blank has some pull and say in that organization as well. It didn't feel like the right fit. So he gets passed over. You wonder if that same it feels like Jacksonville is the one place where everyone keeps saying Shad Khan's going to give him everything. He's going to be able to do everything because he did the same thing with Urban Meyer before they brought Balky in, and that didn't work out well. But you get the point. Somebody who is
very different people,
wants the whole thing. So that's kind of that on Bill. We'll see what happens there. But definitely an interesting Patriots adjacent story that I wanted to get some thoughts on.
And really quick, so Bill giving up the opportunity to get the wins record, I don't think he's giving anything up. Like they said, his preference is the NFL because I think he wants the wins record. Now, the reason I wasn't so surprised last offseason when he didn't get a job with the NFL is that, one, the age. And it's like you are bringing him in and giving him all this power for 2 years, 3 at the absolute max. And that's if he's like riding the high of a Super Bowl or something, and he's like, hey, I want to be back or something along those lines. So, yeah, I wasn't really surprised when he didn't get one just because there were so many young candidates. And I think organizations, unless you're the Cowboys or like the Jaguars where you have talent but you need the leadership, there weren't a lot of teams like that. Most of them were like, no, we want to set a new course for the future. So I don't think it's really within Bill. I don't think it's really up to Bill. I think if he can get to the NFL, he will. But if he can't, then it makes more sense to help out his kid.
No, 100%. I don't like the age factor of it is huge. And I don't think that's anything against Bill and, his coaching style. Now, sometimes it like the rumor was that the way Vrabel is kind of rub people the wrong way. And he's a younger guy and he obviously didn't get a job either. But I think
Also scaring guys, apparently. He was scaring front office people because he's such a big, scary.
He's too burly. Yeah, ridiculous. But
I hope that report wasn't true.
I know. That was a wild one. But yeah, I mean, I know there was so many programs, like you mentioned, that, weren't ready for like a quick turnaround, to like plug and play head coach. Atlanta really felt like the only one because they had brought in, or they were planning on bringing in Kirk Cousins. Or wait, when did Kirk come after that? Yeah,
there was. Didn't they get in trouble? They got hit.
Yeah, there was tampering.
They were caught tampering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, there wasn't a plug and play situation aside from Atlanta for Bill. We'll see if anything can happen this year, but this North Carolina stuff adds a little context and wrinkle to the impending 2025 Bill Belichick sweepstakes as well. All right, Taylor, let's get into our Patriots bye-week mailbag, and I want to start with this. Could Garrett Bowles be an option in free agency if the team doesn't think a tackle is worth taking in the top 5? Garrett Bowles, the left tackle of the Denver Broncos, someone who has turned into one of the better left tackles in football. I think he's very penalized. I think that's the one downside. I think he has like the most penalties taken in the league since he started. But other than that, he's been pretty stout and has helped Bo Nix turn into a pretty solid rookie quarterback. So what do you make? Do you think they could go get Garrett Bowles from Denver this offseason?
So looking at Garrett's perspective, we have to remember that in free agency, it's not very common that a lot of these guys actually hit the market. Now, there are some situations where, like Trey Smith, where you're about to be maybe the highest paid guard in football, and you're on the Chiefs, where they're probably not going to pay you that kind of money. They have money to allocate elsewhere. They're probably going to try to build through the draft. T. Higgins, where obviously things are weird because I've even seen reports that they legitimately might end up not re-signing Jamar Chase for whatever reason. But because of the standoff they had this offseason, I would be kind of surprised if T. Higgins wanted to go there. So there are some situations where I would say, yeah, it makes sense for them to leave and try to get a payday somewhere else. But Garrett Bowles is up there in age. He's on a Denver team that's really got some momentum. They turned things around with Bo Nix. Obviously, that defense has been outstanding. And Garrett Bowles is having one of the best seasons of his career. I don't know why you would come to a situation like the Patriots where it seems like they're even further off, where they don't really have the proof for this season where, okay, they are building towards something. So that's one. I don't think he'd want to leave. They can franchise him. They can do whatever they want. If he's playing like a great tackle and they only have to pay him for a year, I think it makes sense for them to at least throw the franchise tag on him, even though he is up there in age. And then the other thing is with me, with like Garrett Bowles, with Ronnie Stanley, these guys, you're kicking the can down the road. You still need to draft a tackle. And the way I see it, and we talked about this and, we gave out different grades and we talked about guys who we think need to close the season on a high note. I think with Vidarian Lowe, like Garrett Bowles and I think Ronnie Stanley have been penalized a lot. With Vidarian Lowe, you're looking at what are his major weaknesses. He's not an elite pass blocker like a Stanley, like a Garrett Bowles when they're at their game, but he's been average for you. And he's not a great run blocker either. Those guys, I think, are better in that area. But you're thinking, okay, am I going to pay a 30-something-year-old to fill in this gap for a year? Or am I just going to get a really good left guard like a Trey Smith? Then that helps out Vidarian Lowe a ton. Then maybe you help at right tackle. Caden Wallace comes along. Still, I think I'd like to see them get a veteran like a Morgan Moses or a Patrick McCarry just to kind of hold that spot. But I don't think anything should dissuade you from getting a tackle. If you really like Will Campbell, if you like Kelvin Banks or any of those guys, even in the second round prospects, still invest because you need that left tackle of the future. But yeah, I would love Bowles if he shakes free, but I just don't really see that happening. And again, I don't love the idea of kicking the can down the road unless you're getting a true difference maker on like a 1 or 2 year deal.
Yeah. Look, if he hits the market, you mentioned like you have to kind of throw your hat in the ring, I would think, with him. He's a solid player. The left tackle play hasn't been great, but you mentioned it like it's one of those things where you sign a player at this, I guess at that point of your career, you're going to have to eventually fill that void. Drake May's so young, so you're not going to – the only way you pair him with his true left tackle of the future for the very long term is drafting a guy because you draft him, you have his rookie contract, you extend him, and then you get your 8-9 years alongside Drake May, where if it's where if it's one of those guys, it's you sort of you get that – the rookie, you bring him in, he pairs him with him. So we'll see where that goes there. All right, Taylor. Moving on.
Real quick.
Yeah.
Birthday boy in the chat. Happy birthday, Ashton.
Happy birthday, Ashton.
Happy birthday,
congratulations on your birthday, Ashton. Okay. Do you think this scheme fits the big hogs the Patriots have on the offensive line? Should they go back to what worked before with similar linemen than the last several years? What do you make of their scheme fit and the guys they have right now?
So they've actually been one of the better outside zone running teams over the past month. I looked it up. They're top 5 or top 10, I think. They've been good at man or duo and then outside zone. I think more than the offensive line, though, it's a factor of who's getting the ball. Now, I think Antonio Gibson really has started to shine in that outside zone running scheme. Obviously, he's been in it for so long. He's more comfortable in it. Ramondre Stevenson has run outside zone in college and at the NFL level, but he just hasn't been as effective there. If you look at the numbers, really duo, where he's had his bread and butter for his entire career, has really been where he's been at his best. So the pin pull is the one scheme that's had success for them, but when they use it from shotgun with Ramondre Stevenson, I just don't know how well he's reading it, where last game, there was a massive cutback, and I try to be a little more understanding because I know for running backs, when you're running on that kind of horizontal plane, it can be tough to put your foot in the ground and explode uphill or downhill or what have you, but it just seemed like some missed opportunities. So I don't think there's anything wrong necessarily with the scheme. I think maybe who's running it is more of a factor, because in that outside zone pinball kind of thing, that's where Antonio Gibson has really had most of his success, like when he was in Washington. For Mondre, he can run everything, but I would like to see less pinball from shotgun, and I'd like to see more duo moving forward.
Alrighty. I like it. I'm not going to disagree with you. You're the scheme guy. I'm the vibes guy, so I'm going to trust you on all of that.
Vibes are high. I think we're both doing good.
Exactly. But on this, the young guys, 3-10, on to 2025. All the cliches, like you mentioned. We were just in Foxboro. We did midseason grades. We did guys who have the most to prove over the next 4 games. So outside of Drake May, in this, so outside of him, the Patriots have this young core that there's really a lot of question marks. The wide receivers, even Kyle Duggar hasn't been great. I know he's kind of locked in here over the relative long term, at least. Christian Barmore is another one of those guys. But who do you think in this young core will contribute the most moving forward? Who do you kind of have locked in as this team's young core for the future?
So I'm going to consider young under 25. Is that fair? Someone who right now is under 25. So I'm just going to look at the roster right now by the order they've got. Christian Gonzalez feels like the obvious one. Drake May, like we already mentioned. Demario Douglas, I'm curious, honestly. We know he's so good man-to-man. We know he's electric after the catch. But this is an offense that likes to have players who can fill different roles, right? Or you can kind of line up anywhere from snap to snap. And as we know, Pop is not an every down kind of player. He just isn't a good enough blocker. And the size is a concern. The head injuries, although he's done a great job avoiding injuries this season, that's a concern. I would like to say Pop, but I'll be totally honest. I would not be surprised if they double dip at receiver and there's some level of Jalen Polk and Demario Douglas kind of rotating as those guys. But he's under contract and he's a good enough player. I don't think you want to bench him necessarily. So I'll go Pop with a little bit of an asterisk. Other than that, oh my gosh, it's getting kind of grim. Jaquelin Roy, low key, I really do think he could potentially be your nose.
All right, Taylor, but
dude, the list is getting short. I have to say someone.
No, you're right. It is.
The list of non-25-year-olds stopped. I'm sorry. I didn't make the roster.
And I think that's the point, and that's why we see here. And it's I know, again, you're looking for other guys, and I know you're a Jaquelin Roy fan, and I get it. And again, he's
productive too. It's not even I just like him. He was productive. So,
but there's a difference. So, does Christian Barmore count on this list? Or he's 25, right?
Do you think we'll contribute? And that's a contributor. Christian Barmore's 25 right now.
Okay.
I'll even extend. I'll go into 25. Among the guys that are 25, Bryce Behringer, you would hope, but he's been a bit up and down this season. Christian Barmore, obviously. Then who else? Then Vidarian Lowe, probably not, obviously. Marte Mapu, been inconsistent. Keon White is another one who I
Keon, duh. Okay.
Really? Yeah, so Christian Barmore, Drake May, Keon White, I just can't say Marte Mapu right now. Then Barmore, Bryce Behringer, and Jaquelin Roy. Really your guys. That's your young core. Which is why hopefully they get a high number one, trade that MFer, and you get more number ones.
I know.
And get a bunch of premium positions filled back-to-back years, back-to-back, maybe to back years, but that's kind of got to be your goal, is you need to fill those premium positions in Drake May's contract with young talent. So hopefully they can rise together. If you got to pay him, you got to pay him, but get that cycle going.
Right. On that note, one more before we get into an ad break. Javon Baker, a guy under 25, a question mark heading into this core, who will be a contributor. Eventually, 4th-round pick, so they invested a little bit in him, but has not been productive whatsoever this season. Was promising. We liked him out of UCF, the both of us did, but we haven't seen a lot. And there's been I feel like a mental hurdle with him, and Alex Van Pelt kind of alluded to that a couple months ago. but we haven't seen him much on the field. He hasn't been given an opportunity. So Gerard Mayo did his bye-week interview with Tom Curran the other day. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on NBC Sports Boston. A really good, inside look at where Mayo's at through 13 games, But he did mention that they want to see what these young guys have so that they can decide who's going to be a part of this core moving forward. So to take more out of Anthony Enjoyer _'s question of more Baker soon, do you think we're going to see more Javon Baker down the stretch? Do you think they can put him out there if he hasn't cleared this hurdle? Is it a thing where it's like, I kind of mentioned it earlier when we were down in Foxboro, please go out there and run a post and just sit him on the sideline and tell him exactly what to do. Like, where do they go with him? Is it that much of a problem? Do you think we're going to see him down the stretch?
I'm going to try not to bore people because my response has been the same week in and week out. If we're not seeing Javon Baker on the game field, he's doing something wrong or he's not doing something well enough in practice. And we've seen that translate when he gets on the field because he's not running the right routes. Like Drake May targeted him, I think, last week or 2 weeks ago, and they weren't on the same page. There was a play a few weeks back where he was supposed to run block and ran a route, and the guy who was supposed to block ended up tackling Ramondre Stevenson on what could have been a much more significant gain. So mentally, like, you're talking about a guy who lined up on one side of the field in college and didn't really move unless they were in a formation where there were 3 wide receivers to one side and a tight end to the other. Then he'd be the number 3. I didn't really know just how significant that would be, to be honest. I thought that may have just been something that people gassed a little bit too much. But I think it does play a factor because on top of the playbook and having to be on top of your routes and run them at the exact depth with the right footsteps so you're in step with Drake May, you've also just got to line up in the right place and be able to do the right thing at the right time. So to be honest, I don't hate the idea of simplifying things for him. If he's just running a go route or a post and it's just like, hey man, there's no options on this, there's no reads, just literally run the route, that's one thing. But you also have to think about how much is Drake May actually throwing to him. If he's not earning the chance to be there on the game field consistently and he's not getting design touches, he's probably not getting thrown to very much in practice either. I know Drake May loves him. They have the history and all that, but like, reps are reps. And it's really hard to expect a kid to go out there and be able to execute at a high level when he's not really involved in practice. So sure, if you can simplify things for him and just give him some momentum so you're like, oh, there's the deep ability, sure. But I mean, I have a lot of issues assuming that we're going to see more from Javon Baker when even when he's been on the field, it's been very shaky.
And the trickle effect of it, where if he's not at the right spot at the right time, May makes a poor throw because he thinks he's elsewhere, then Drake May starts throwing interceptions and they're not on the same page. And that can kind of hinder the development of Drake May a little bit. And again, not that he's going to sit there and buckle just because Javon ran a route at 7 yards and not 5, but that kind of stuff works off of each other. And we talked about that a little bit in the crossover the other day. It's like a lot of the mistakes Drake May has made, they haven't been solely on him. Now, a couple of them, the one where he didn't throw it out of bounds and Austin Hooper tried to get it to Austin Hooper, and the guy just picked it off right in front of him. That's obviously all on Drake May. But Kendrick Bourne slip it up. Demario Douglas, him, and they're not on the same page. So a lot of that stuff, you need to be in lockstep with these guys. And if he's not in lockstep with Javon Baker, it's not just gonna not allow Baker to improve, but it's gonna kind of stop the whole offense from doing their thing. So you want to see it, but it's not as simple as, hey, just get on the field, and if you do the right thing and you didn't do the right thing, that's on you. There's a trickle-down effect on that. So we'll see where it goes the next 4 games. All right, we're going to get back to your questions in a few moments, but first, a quick word from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players to win a shot at up to 100 times your cash. So come join us and run your game all season long on PrizePicks. They put their members first. All withdrawals, are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money in as little as 15 minutes. They also offer Venmo, so you can connect your account for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals this entire sports season. Think James Cook's going to get more than 60 yards this week? Joe Burrow more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up all those hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew won your game on PrizePicks. Last night I had Jamison Williams to have more than 22.5 yards on his longest reception. It hit on the Lions' first drive. Unfortunately, I also picked Jordan Love to have more than 225.5 yards. He only had 206, but we're running it back tonight. Celtics game. I'll have a post on my Twitter tonight, so we'll see what happens there. Shout out Richie Lemaire for making me those fire edits on there and allowing us to keep promoting PrizePicks. So If you want to join us, come along, download the app, and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win. All you got to do is play the lineup. Again, that's code CLNS, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, Taylor, back to it. We talked about Baker. We talked about the young guys. We talked about a free agency acquisition, so let's go with one more. And people think it's a slam dunk. We're getting T. Higgins. I don't know how many people actually think that. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. They need a wide receiver. He's going to leave. I don't want to say he's similar to Joe Burrow, but Drake May obviously has a lot of promise moving forward in this league, so people have connected him. What do you think happens if they don't get T. Higgins, if they lose out on the sweepstakes? What would be their backup option for free agent wide receivers?
So we talked about this. It's not great. Like there's a pretty significant drop off once you get off the T. Higgins bandwagon. Now, you know what? I'm going to go to over the cap, look up the free agent. So I actually have the list out here right in front of me.
We did this the other day, didn't we? Yeah.
We did do this the other day, but I'm just going to make sure
not on the show, by the way. So we did it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So again, Stephon Diggs, very unlikely that he leaves the Texans. Keenan Allen, not moving the needle either way. Chris Godwin, I don't see why he would leave Tampa Bay, but he's coming off a significant injury. Amari Cooper has said that he hasn't enjoyed playing football like this, going to the Bills in a long time. I don't see why he would come to the Patriots, where you don't even know for sure if you're going to make the playoffs next year. And then just moving on with receivers, I don't know why it's giving me other positions. There we go. Like Deontay Johnson has done nothing for the Ravens. DeAndre Hopkins, why would he?
Did you see Deontay Johnson just refuse to go in the game last week and just got suspended? Yeah.
Is that why he got suspended?
Yeah, he got suspended. Apparently, he refused to go in the game last week for the Ravens. Wild.
Freaking bizarre. Okay, yeah. So no.
I'm good. Right.
No, then Mike Williams, whatever. Brandon Cooks, I would be interested. And then Darius Slayton and Demarcus Robinson. That's really what you're looking at. Now, I know everyone gets so mad at me when I bring up Darius Slayton, but listen to the names.
I may not have started that.
But I mean, the reason is, one, he has experience as a true X receiver. You can't say that about a lot of the guys on this list. And he brings juice after the catch vertically. Are drops a problem? Yeah, he's had some drops where I'm just like, oh, okay, I see why people get frustrated with you. But also Daniel Jones, so many of the drops are actually just him having to adjust a way that he really shouldn't have to. And so many times you see him separate vertically and it's not a catchable ball. I think with Drake May, he just gives you a dynamic that you don't have on the offense right now. Javon Baker is good deep, but he doesn't have deep speed. He really is just very good at playing the ball in the air and tracking it. Slayton would give you a little more explosiveness than you already have. And again, experience as a true X receiver gives you the ability to move other guys around. Then Demarcus Robinson has been the X for the Rams. Not great or anything like that, 31 years old, but he's still got plenty of athleticism. And if he's good enough for the Rams, damn well better be good enough for you. Not like KJ Osborne type. I really do think Demarcus Robinson, if he were signed, could not be a difference maker, but a more solid, reliable veteran than maybe what they have right now. And then Brandon Cooks. I love me some Cookie. He's always been criminally underrated. Now that he's actually old, even though we've thought he was old for 6 years because he's gotten the NFL.
Crazy.
20 years old. He's still a good player, even if it's the injuries. But I mean, if you can't get T. Higgins, not that I'm saying you have to force receiver. I think my biggest lesson learned from last year is, yes, I thought they needed to address tackle, address wide receiver. It would have been really hard, as we said in all the shows, to justify going defense or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't want them to reach just because they need the position. So there's plenty of X receiver types in this draft. They're not all blazers. They're more going to be day two kind of guys where they have their issues. But if you find a guy that can win vertically, however you kind of put that in your wheelhouse, then that does help you. But with T, it's just you don't have a lot of other options for explosiveness like this, especially if you don't take a wide receiver early on. So I'm just letting you know right now, it might not be great if T. Higgins ends up going to the Chargers and he's just I want to go to a team that had playoff aspirations in 2024, not one that was at or near the bottom of the league. But yeah, just it's tough. I know everyone wants the great left tackle and the great wide receiver, and maybe they get that if money talks the way that they hope it will, but it's not always that easy. Sometimes you got to plug holes and just fill roles.
Yeah. It's going to, like you said, it's going to be bleak if they don't get T. I don't think they're going to go down without a fight. I do think they'll be in the bidding war, but sometimes it's just up to the player, and that's not necessarily, the front office's fault, unless we hear that, they lowballed them and things like that. But
we have not heard there's a way, other than the guys that we didn't think they were actually going to win.
Right. Exactly. So we'll see what happens. it's going to be a slam dunk that they'll probably be in, the mix for him. But if he doesn't sign, the options, like you said, are bleak. All right, I want to play a game with this question. DC Fanlord asks, would you rather sign T. Higgins, trade for DK, or draft Ted McMillan? Instead of just answering the question straight up, let's play start, bench, cut. So rank these in order of how you would like them to have. Start, bench, cut, signing T. Higgins, trading for DK Metcalf, drafting Ted McMillan.
My first would be signing T. Higgins because money is money. That's just the easiest way to
You don't have to give up assets, right?
And it's a proven commodity. I like DK better than any of these guys. I'll say that. Especially the more I watch, like with T. Higgins, he's elite short and he's pretty good downfield, but DK is like good at everything pretty much. Mm-hmm. He's inconsistent, has a bit of a drop problem himself, but makes spectacular plays and can really punish a defense deep. I would trade for him as long as it's not for anything in 2025. I don't want you to give up like a first or second round pick. If it's a third, then maybe, but I really don't think you can be giving up necessarily top 100 picks this year. So I would put trade for DK at the top. If it were like a third and like a future second, I could maybe get on board with that. And then drafting T-Mac, I would just put it at the bottom because I want next season to be about surrounding Drake May with proven talent as much as possible. Whether that's a top pick where it's almost a surefire they're going to succeed in the NFL, or whether it's a veteran who you at least know that they are a professional and they're going to be league average at worst. Like that is what I want. I like Ted McMillan a lot. If they take him, I'm not going to complain, but he still has things he needs to work on. He needs to be better off the line of scrimmage in his release packages. He needs to be better fighting off contact. And those things can show up as a rookie. And it's probably going to be a guy, if they take him like top 5, top 10, he's plug and play. He's starting immediately.
You got to play him.
Exactly. I don't think he can't be, but I would rather put my money on a DK or a T. Higgins where they can do that. Obviously, T. Higgins to a lesser degree because of the injuries, but I just rather go with the proven commodity. So if we're talking something reasonable, like not giving up a ton, I would put trade DK at the top for reasonable, trade package, sign T. Higgins, and then draft T-Mac.
Yeah, I'm with you on all of it. I agree that trading for DK is number one. Having to add the assets in a trade on top of also likely signing to an extension like that, you're paying a lot, but you're also getting a lot. And I do think DK is a better wide receiver than TK. I almost just said TK Higgins. Lose my DK. DK is better than T. More consistent. I feel like you could do more with him. And Higgins is, the injury history with him we've talked about on the show can sometimes be a question mark. You're getting more with DK. So I would do the trade. Again, anything reasonable, like the market value trades around those type of guys, do that, nothing more. And I would say I'd put that at number one. But I'm okay with T.
While we're on this topic real quick, I'm just going to answer this fast.
Sure.
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. For a left tackle, a good starting left tackle for a second round pick, hell yes, I'm taking that deal.
That would be interesting. And now, right now, they're playing Slater at left and Alt at right, I'm pretty sure.
That's right, yeah.
But you drafted him with the 5th overall pick. If as the Chargers, you think, let's get rid of Slater, I would do that all day, 100%. Yeah. I like that.
Because you're hoping you can get a second round tackle if you can, maybe, necessarily draft Will Campbell and you can go for Abdul Carter or a Tet or, whatever. So hell yeah, man. Second round pick for a starting left tackle. Absolutely. I don't think that's what you get him for though, to be honest. I think you'd have to put something in that package.
Let's start speaking that one into existence, Taylor. Put out a couple promo tweets around that. Maybe Rashawn Slater becomes a Patriot next year. All right. Flip it to the defense for a second. We talked about this young core, 25 and under. Marte Mapu was a healthy scratch the last time the Patriots played. So to answer the question, do you think he's on the roster at the end of next season? I still do. But what's going on with him? Again, I said that, you're the scheme guy and I'm the vibes guy on this show, but you can kind of track this stuff a little bit better than me, at least, on the defensive side of the ball. What's going on with Marte Mapu? Why hasn't he been the player that we think he should be?
It does stink that he's missed time this summer, missed almost all of training camp. Last year, obviously, was dealing with an injury and was kind of a little bit more limited. I think the inexperience is one thing. You can see his recognition, especially against misdirection, against play action. He's a tick slow pretty consistently, and it does worry you. It doesn't seem like he's aligned right all the time. I know there was one play a few weeks back where he didn't cover his zone defender in the flat. completely abandoned it. And then he's a major liability as a run defender, unfortunately. I really like his playmaking ability. I think he's got good range. I think he's got good ball skills. I think overall, when he can read the quarterback, he's got good instincts. But I think that the Patriots have used him more like Kyle Duggar, where they truly have him doing everything. I don't think that's what he does best. I think he's more of a Devin McCourty type, where he's just not big enough for you to want him to be involved in the run game consistently unless he's your last line of defense. But at the same time, he's also not super consistent as a tackler to the point where I would trust him to be the center field guy consistently. And then, obviously you can play robber and be more of a playmaker. You can man up on tight ends. Again, the Devin McCourty role, where it's things that really just fit his skill set. I think he'd be used better, but I also think he needs to earn that by being consistent in just a lot of the fundamental areas. So I know it's confusing. I know I've been one of the people that's hyping Marte Mapu up, and I still saw the flashes of things that I thought I would see. But one, again, the use is part of it. I was hoping he wouldn't really be like the third safety in the nickel package. I hate when they use him that way. But I was hoping he could maybe turn into some kind of every down player. He lost steam in the summer, lost steam in the spring, to be honest. We were talking about Jalen Hawkins as a third safety even back then. So it has been disappointing, but I just think a lot of it is like fundamentally he has work to do.
Yeah. All right, another young guy struggling right now, Jalen Polk. Courtney asks, if I told you Polk had 5 catches for 60 yards next week, how does it come? How do they make that happen? And they haven't schemed a ton up for Polk. I think I saw one quick sort of wide receiver screen they threw to him a couple weeks ago. I think that's the only catch he's had the last 3 weeks. So how does a 5-catch 60-yard game for Jalen Polk happen in your mind?
They tried to scheme up a touch for him. The one target he got last week where he and Greg went the same page. It's like when you're the number 3 in empty and they run Haas, you are the one who is supposed to be getting the ball unless there's a certain type of look that Drake likes better. They're literally trying. And it's kind of not unfair, obviously, but they gave him an option route, and it's he doesn't really get that many reps. I don't know why you'd give him an option route.
I know.
If this happened, I would say give him a slant from the slot, something a little more simple where he has space to work with. I would say bunch formations where we saw Puka Nacua. He comes into the bunch and runs that out route. We actually saw that from Jalen Polk earlier this season. Just didn't work out because Jacoby Brissett overthrew him. Some play action, hard play action where he's maybe on a crosser, but we've also seen him kind of involved in that way as well. But I think just scheme stuff like play action, screens, bunch looks where he has an advantageous route break and he's the main read, those kinds of things. But at the same time, when you've got guys like Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper and Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte who have earned more opportunities because they're blocking, because they're making catches, because they're making plays, it's hard to scheme things up for these young guys. And I know you want to get them more involved, but it's unless you're earning it in practice, you can't just give them opportunities. You still want to win games. You still want to reward the guys who are playing well for you. And the guys who are playing well for you, other than Hooper, are going to be under contract for a while. And I would be stunned if Hooper's not back next season. So it's the same thing with Baker. You need to do more. You can scheme all the opportunities you want, but he's got to take advantage of them. And so far he hasn't in really most or any of his opportunities.
Yeah. It's like you said, there has been enough opportunities where, again, you're trying to get him the ball and he's just not doing anything with it. So, what more can you do? You have to take advantage. You have to go out there and be the player they expect you to be. And whether it's mental, whether it's physical, whether it's he's just not good enough to play in the league, I don't know the answers to it quite yet. It's super early in this guy's career, but he hasn't done enough with, he's out there, right? They put him out there. And, I don't know his snap counts last week. It was lower than, when weeks passed. But outside, I don't think he's ever been a healthy scratch. He's been out with injury. And other than that, he's been out there. So they're giving him the right opportunity. He just hasn't done anything with it. So we'll see what happens with Jalen Polk. All right, I want to get 2 coaching front office questions out of the way. Not out of the way as if we're not going to take them seriously, but I think we're both under the impression that Gerard Mayo and Elliot Wolf are 100% safe next season. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. On top of that, what if Ben Johnson would come here? Because, and the reason I ask, there's a couple reasons. One, you pair him with the quarterback and they take off. The other reason is Albert Breer shared last night up on the NFL on Prime pregame show that Ben Johnson is going to be very selective with his next team. He's only going to take interviews for jobs he wants to go to. He wants organizational alignment. He wants to know that he's going to, there's a plan in place to kind of take this team that he's on to the next step. And everyone sort of points to the Bears with him, I think, because Caleb Williams, and there's a quarterback involved, and stuff around he wants to hear from the organization how they're going to help him succeed. The Bears are a dumpster fire right now. I think that all means he wants to know from Bears ownership, from the front office, they're in lockstep together and they're going to go to the next step. So I kind of put the Patriots in that bunch where there's organizational question marks right now, and you have a potentially generational quarterback. Would you want Ben Johnson here, Taylor? Like, would you give up on Jerod Mayo right now if you knew that Ben Johnson would come here and be Drake May's OC and head coach moving forward?
Look, Ben Johnson, I would say, has more of an established track record, obviously, than Jerod Mayo. Like with Jerod, yes, he led the defense, but he was like a part-time thing, and you can kind of poke holes in that. Whereas Ben Johnson has clearly been the architect of one of the best offenses in the NFL for multiple years. Now, I'm not just going to be flippant and say like, oh, I have no interest in Ben Johnson. Like, obviously, yeah, it would be really, really cool to see Ben Johnson and Drake May, especially if they really invest in the offensive line, and you kind of build something somewhat like what the Lions have in Detroit. That said, the trickle-down effect of this would be significant. Like, I don't want to – do I want Ben Johnson? Yes. But here is what would happen. One, it would be a bad look for ownership because you fired somebody that you said was the future of your franchise, right? You already had him locked in. So you're going to fire that guy after a year. One, bad look. Even if it works out for you, obviously – I'm not going to get into that. We don't know what ownership is going to look like in 10 years necessarily, so I'm not going to say if Ben Johnson works out, then that's going to kind of fly under the rug and be like, hey, they got themselves out of a bad situation into a good one. No one's going to care. But still, Elliott Wolf, now he has to get on the same page as someone else, and he thought that he was going to be working in tandem with Jerod Mayo. That's a little kind of wrench you throw in. Also, it's very unlikely that Ben Johnson keeps Alex Van Pelt. To change up the system with Drake May, obviously, if it's an upgrade, like these are just going to be growing pains. And if it works out and they're together for 20 years, then no one's going to care. And I acknowledge that completely. But also, you would be completely uprooting Drake May's foundation after a year with someone who's actually been doing well. Drake May looks better than anybody could have possibly imagined as a rookie. On top of that, the Patriots have been one of the best offenses in the NFL over the past month. If you look at EPA or positive EPA, which is basically like yards per play, but it factors in situation and tells you how efficient they've been. They've been top 5, top 10 offense over the past month since week 10. Explosiveness, not so much. They're still like middle of the pack towards the bottom of the league in that. But the fact they're moving the ball well is outstanding. The red zone offense obviously needs to improve. They need to be better at the end of halves. But Alex Van Pelt hasn't been so bad where it makes sense to completely like throw away the foundation that Drake May has. So again, man, it's a layered conversation, and it's not easy. And I think that really Jerod would have to finish on a bad note. Like, we're talking, like, obviously the Colts game is what we were talking about before the bye week, where it's not going to be pretty if you lose this game because that's 2 weeks where everyone's just going to be talking about you and speculating and all this. And if they lose out and it's not competitive and you don't see, hey, at least they were in it. Like, they took the Bills to the wire. They, really beat up on the Chargers and made it a long day for them. They didn't let Kyler Murray kill them with his legs. And, they moved the ball consistently and continue to look good on offense. If that doesn't happen, then I think the head coaching stuff is going to be on the table, and I'm going to have a hard time explaining why it shouldn't be. But I do think that when you're running a business, making those kind of reactionary moves can really bite you in the butt. They did it with Bill Belichick after 2 years, 2 years of failure. They were like, we got to pull the plug. So it's not like it's completely against them. But I do think there are just so many factors that kind of trickle down where it's like, if you bring in somebody brand new, you're putting a lot of guys.
Rash.
I think you give yourself a bad look in the league, and that does matter. Even if Robert Kraft is not the sole owner and the guy running things in like 5-10 years, and if things go great, awesome, then no one's going to care. It's going to be like Bill, pulling out of the Jets and going to the Patriots. Kind of similar situation to that, but I just think it's so dicey. As much as obviously, like, I want to find reasons for Ben Johnson, like, it would be super exciting, but I just think the politics of the NFL, it wouldn't be smart.
In a vacuum, without any caveats, layers, realistic situations, I would rather Ben Johnson take over for Jerod Mayo and be the Patriots head coach with Drake May. But there's so many layers, like you said. They can't. I'm pretty sure there's got to be some sort of tampering situation where if they called the Lions before they fired, like, there's steps to it. You have to fire Mayo, and then you have to have your head coach conversation. So, like, you can't fire Mayo not knowing that you have Ben Johnson in the bag, because that's a super bad look. And then for Ben Johnson, it's well, are they really going to trust me? Are they really going to allow me to come in here and do this whole thing? Because you just told Gerard Mayo that last season, and now you're throwing him to the wayside once things got bad after just his first 17 games over. I think that's why, like, Mike Vrabel's name is popping up in this coaching cycle, and everyone I keep hearing, go get Vrabel. He'd want to be here. You could just tell him that, like, you didn't realize he'd be around and he popped up. It's like, okay, but then what happens when, like, in Mike Vrabel's head, if he hears all this from ownership and says, oh, no, they really want me, he's going to be like, well, wait a second. You just told Gerard Mayo that the same thing last year. He's been the guy all along, and you trusted him, and you were going to give him this open book, and this is his franchise. And so I'm not going to take that job if you're just going to get rid of him right now. So it is a bad look. The coaches are going to see that. They're going to know that. So I don't think it's ever going to happen because I think Gerard's going to be here. And even if they fire him, it's a bad look. And I don't think you're going to get that A-plus head coach next year because of all those layers and the way you went about it. So ideally
stable, and then you kind of it's everything that Ben Johnson just said he didn't want to be a part of. So
right. Which is why I find it hard to believe that he's going to go to Chicago and think, oh, okay, well, they're just going to change things because it's me right now. Like,
I think he knows that in Chicago they just don't care enough. And it's like,
I know.
They're just run very poorly, but they're not intrusive. They are run poorly because they don't make the moves they need to make because they're not very proactive.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, that's the coaching questions. We're going to get back to the rest of the mailbag and wrap this thing up in just a second. But first, let's talk about our friends over at GameTime. It's the best ticketing app on the market right now. You can get your NFL tickets, NBA tickets, concert tickets, all of it through the GameTime app. And they also have the new GameTime Picks feature that filters out the fluff and shows you only the great deals on amazing seats on the GameTime app. Right now, if you head over to GameTime and say you're headed out to Arizona next weekend and you haven't bought tickets yet, or if you're a California fan, Arizona fan, if you're living out there and you want to go check out the Patriots next week, you can do so on the GameTime app for as little as $51 right now. And that is with the all-in pricing all-in pricing option toggled on, so that is no hidden fees. You just know exactly what you're paying. And if you're local, you want to check out the Patriots coming up against the Chargers in a few weeks, you can get into that game for as little as $34 right now on the app. So go check it out. You can see your seat view. You can turn in all-in pricing. They also have the lowest price guaranteed, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CLNS, you get $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it, Taylor?
Game time.
Good answer. It's also time to wrap up the mailbag. We still have plenty of questions from Twitter, so we'll go rapid fire here. We'll start off quickly with this one. Do you prefer an early bye week or a late bye week, Taylor? What do you think of us having the week off this week?
That's a good question.
As an analyst, and also
I never had an early one. I only had the mid-season one last year, and now this one late. When they're losing like this, I probably want one a little closer to the middle because it's got to be just. I don't want to say exhausting. Like we are very lucky to have these jobs, and I've worked much more exhausting jobs than this. But mentally, It does kind of take a toll on you at some point because like you have to be on all the time, and then when they're losing, like you're a human being, and being around people who are kind of discouraged and things are down, and we're in the community and all that. So maybe mid bye week, but honestly, this late one, I'm not mad. It kind of gives me the reset I need to get through the last month of the season. So I don't know. What do you think?
I like late. I think I like where we're at right now. You get through the big chunk at the beginning, you get a week off, and then you get the second half is only 4 weeks and then the season's over, especially when there's no playoffs. So again, what are we complaining? Yeah, we survived. And also, what are we complaining about? We cover sports for a living. It's the best job in the world. But it's still, you go, if it's an early bye week, it's like, oh, and I was listening to some podcast. I think it was, I don't know who it was, but it was a couple players and they were talking about, it was Brian Hoyer and Andrews on Quick Snap. And they were talking about like Hoyer one time had like a week 4 bye, the earliest possible when he was in Cleveland. They played 3 games bye week, and then you have like 13 games left.
It's the point of that even. Literally,
I know it makes no sense. So like that would be terrible. I think this is a good spot, both for players. Players, I think they probably want mid-season to kind of get a good break. Unless like right now, if you're the
mental
Chiefs
reset, I would feel like maybe
Chiefs and Bills, a team that's going to go try and make a Super Bowl run, I think wait for the bye week because then you get your rest in, and then you have 4 games left, and then a stretch run, maybe a bye week in there if you're the 1 seed. I feel like you would rather a late bye week there, but I don't know because we're not around a winning team. Just an aside on the locker room. I watched Dan Campbell's post-game pump-up speech to the Lions after last night's game, and to see like an all-together locker room like fired up, like just how much they gave game balls to Tim Patrick and Jake Bates, their kicker, and both those guys. The first thing they said was just like, "I love this team, man." I don't think the Patriots don't love their team, but for them to be doing that and winning, and to go into work every day and be like super happy, striving for one goal, it's like. That's what these old Patriots teams were. They might have been a little bit more miserable with Brady and Bill at the helm, but hopefully the Patriots can turn that page soon.
Did you see the FanDuel post for the video where somebody said the caption is Dan Campbell can get me to run into a wall?
Yeah. Yep.
Just running this.
Yeah. Crazy. All right. What is the biggest long-term need on this Patriots roster right now?
Pass rusher. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than wide receiver?
Long term is like what? Turn this into something for me, because long term is like they have like multiple long term needs. And they're all premium positions. Like maybe
what's
not
more
because of Keon and.
What's a more important? I know it's kind of strange.
I'll go left tackle. Because you can't find them. You can't just get them in free agency in their prime or anything. It's very hard to even get them. Wide receiver you can find throughout the draft. Pass rush you can find throughout the draft. Left tackle, very, very hard position to nail down in free agency or the draft. So actually I'll probably go with that. Because even now we don't know what the future is there. At least at receiver, you could say, all right, maybe like Kayshon Boutte and Javon Baker and Jalen Book figure it out. And and even pass rusher, it's like, well, if Barmore and Keon White are on at the same time, then at least you have a good interior rush. But left tackle, as much as I like Vidarian, and I think he could be a decent bridge, I don't know who you have there long term where you're like, yes, this is going to be the guy.
I agree. And I think, pass rush is up there too, but I think I even put pass rusher over receiver because I think Drake May is good enough that he's going to keep elevating the guys around him. He's already kind of done it with Kayshon Boutte and I guess Pop Douglas is Pop Douglas anyway, and we haven't seen much from the young guys either. So maybe you do need one of those, but I still think like protecting Drake May right now, I think is a little more important than getting him weapons.
And not just Drake, but also Ramondre. Like we talked about the investment in Drake. You paid a big contract to a running back. For you not to invest in the offensive line and have Mondre run it brick walls for the next 2-3 years is malpractice. So, like, if you're going to invest in it, you need to put both of those guys in the best position to be successful. It's not just Drake.
Right. All right, let's go with a fun one here. If they do land T. Higgins in free agency and they have the 3rd pick, and Shadur Sanders and call it Cam Ward go 1 and 2, would you take Travis Hunter at number 3 or would you trade back? I've kept the book open when we had these conversations. I feel like we always get a Travis Hunter question in the mailbag. And I've always said, yeah, but what if he does work in the NFL? What if he can play receiver and corner? And it's not going to be every play, so you're kind of taking away a little bit on both sides. And then I heard Phil Perry on, I think it was Zolak and Bertrand the other day talking like he was kind of on team Travis Hunter. And I was like, oh, somebody else thinks they can do this too. Maybe I'm not completely crazy for maybe wanting him. So would you take him? Is it just a talent thing, or do you think it's more likely and more, I guess, responsible to just trade back?
It's just like, I think he's super talented. And this is a draft where my thing is like, get the best players available. With Travis Hunter, though, I think he could be an elite cornerback, right?
Everyone in the live chat is no. I don't want Travis. Trade back. Damn it.
Frame for me. I'm so afraid of him getting hurt. And I know I think he's been good throughout his college career, but like, look at him, man. Like, it's same thing with Xavier Worthy. I tried so hard to justify them maybe getting Worthy, but I'm just like,
right.
Toothpick. And I know Travis Hunter's an explosive athlete. He's not in the same vein as an Xavier Worthy or Tyquan Thornton. This guy is completely
totally
great.
He's a specimen.
Player. Yes, specimen and a great football player, period. It's the durability for me. Like, I'm sorry. And you're talking about, like, I don't really want him at receiver full time. I think if you're going to take him, the best thing to do is put him at corner. And and it's a great player, and that secondary would be awesome. And, like, I don't want to go against what I'm saying. it's really more the durability. Like even a Will Johnson, I'm not as excited about because he's got his own durability issues. So like that's the thing for me. If it's a first round pick, I want a guy with a clean health record. Like top 15, I don't want to be taking any chances. I know Travis Hunter has been healthy in his career, but I'm sorry, man. It scares me. It scares me. And you can still get different makers in other positions, but like I have a hard time. And I feel, it makes me so mad because he's like the kind of talent that I obviously
want
ridiculous. Draft rare athletes. But again, man, it's like how much is he going to be on the field realistically? I just don't know.
He's ridiculous. Like he's going to win the Heisman. He's the best player in college football. He is an elite cornerback and he's an elite wide receiver. Last year, his usage was not his usage, but his numbers at wide receiver were down a little bit. Now this year, he popped off and he went for 1,414 touches. Like he's a monster. What I wonder is not necessarily not durability. I don't know how I want to go with it. Like the snap count is insanely high because he plays on both sides all the time. So
that's not sustainable in the NFL. He can't be a two-way play. He can be a magic player, but sorry, yeah.
And no, well, I guess if he does try and do that, and I don't know if a team will, there's going to be a shelf life because he's only going to play 5 years if he tries to play all that. Like his body's just going to, like, I wonder right now, every single time I watch Colorado and I see him on the floor or on the floor, talking basketball, on the field, every single play, I'm like, how does this guy stay in this shape? How are his muscles not like screaming at him after every single game? And then he goes out there and he plays all these snaps and he gets hit and he hits people and he's running around. Like the shape he's in is insane. It's incredible. It's something we've never seen before in the sport. But if he tries to do it for that much longer, I just don't know how long he continues to stay, like as an NFL player. How long is his shelf life? And if he only plays one side, then you're missing out on the other side. And then you try and kind of handle it. I don't want to say it's going to be a headache because he's so good that whatever team takes him, he's going to be awesome. But I wonder where he fits in the league.
Like I'd rather if we're talking rare athletes, I'd rather take an Abdul Carter than a Travis Hunter, where like a defensive lineman affects the game more than a cornerback. Like objectively, they should be valued higher. And even on offense, like receivers, you can find receivers. You're going to find Travis Hunter? No. You can find really, really good starting caliber receivers, second round, third round, fourth round, if you're very, very good at evaluating. Rare edge rushers like Abdul Carter, you're not going to find those guys on like day two. It doesn't really happen. And if you do, there's usually some glaring red flags. So, oh my God, I stop. Enough of this. I feel so
the one thing
crap about Travis. He's not talking crap. I like Travis Hunter so much, but I'm sorry, I can't justify it in my head.
From the chat, and quickly, we only have time for one more question, then we got to go. But Mike Larry in the chat says that's too much running. Kid's going to be gassed by halftime. Like, but he's not right now. Like, he does this right now. It's incredible the shape he's in, and I don't think
the NFL schedule too.
That's true. It's going to be
a schedule. You're in the NFL. You're not in the. Is Colorado? Was it the Pac-12?
Pac-12, yeah.
Pac-12,
Big 12.
Big 12, sorry. I'm not really good at college. But, like, that's a completely different level of competition you're going up against. Like, like him playing both sides is not even a conversation. It's what side is he going to spend most of his time on and where is he going to spotlight? That's pretty much it, which means cornerback and receiver pretty much. Do we want to do the defense?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna finish off. Fascinating conversation on Travis Hunter. I don't know if it's going to happen. Whatever team has that headache should be a lot of fun. All right, let's close it with this. Taylor, from our good friend Andrew De Silva, can you describe what DeMarcus Covington's defensive scheme / philosophy is, and what type of players do you feel he's going to be asking for this offseason to try and improve it?
Yeah, so I wanted to look by the numbers just to see schematically, especially in coverage, because run defense, I think we know what the Patriots are in run defense. Like, you don't have Juwan Bentley, you don't have Christian Barmore. Lawrence Guy, obviously, phased him out because I think you wanted to be a little bit more rounded on the defensive front, which is ironic because you're not. But, Daniel probably wasn't what you thought he'd be. And then you don't have Jabril Peppers for a lot of the season or Kyle Duggar for a lot of the season. The run defense, it's like, yeah, they weren't good because they're missing some of their best players. I think that's like very straightforward. I don't think we really need to do this whole like town hall meeting. They're getting better at missing tackles, but like they had some glaring talent weaknesses that just kind of killed them. I think the more interesting conversation is coverage, because last year, obviously, they were elite in run defense, but the talent was better. Whereas last year, they didn't have Christian Gonzalez, right? Jonathan Jones was kind of in and out of the lineup. Marcus Jones, they didn't have all of the season. And you had Christian Barmore, who made up for a lot of the things in the secondary. But why are they so much worse? What are they doing coverage-wise? That, for me, was the most interesting part of this equation. So real quick, I'm going to take this down. I'm going to put up some numbers, all right? So Passer rate. Oh, wait, is this the right one? Do I have the right one? Here it is. I went in the wrong order. Wait, let me fix that actually because I don't want people to get confused. I'm sorry.
No worries.
I changed this last minute. All right, we're back now. So when you look at coverage tendencies by the usage rate, the Patriots are actually playing even more man coverage. A lot of people think they should be playing more. DeMarcus Covington has really leaned into the cover one, and they're still very good when they play cover one. The difference is this year, they're spinning the dial a little bit more, right? So instead of last year, for the past 2 years, they've been one of the most cover two heavy schemes in the NFL. A lot of that's because when they play their cover one, they like to mix it up with cover two because it's easy to disguise and make cover two look like cover one. All you basically do is have one of the guys in the slot drop down into one of the deep parts of the field. The biggest difference is, though, like cover zero, pretty much the same usage. Cover three is way down. Now they've replaced it with, again, more cover one and also more quarters. All right. So DeMarcus Covington kind of trending more towards where the NFL is going with more split safety coverages. But what does that look like? Spoiler alert, it has not been great. So when you look at where the Patriots are the most different when it comes to their coverage usages, cover one, like I said, they're still very good. Cover three, still very good. The middle field close coverages, where they've really stunk is in cover two. They've been much worse. Part of that is because I think they were disguising it differently, especially earlier on in the year, where they would have, a slot corner rather than a slot safety be the one to drop that into the deep half. So you didn't actually know where the deep coverage was coming from, but they've gotten burned by it. And it hasn't just been that. A lot of it has been the fact that without Juwan Bentley, who, yes, you can complain about him in coverage, but he has such great instincts, right? He more often than not is going to get as deep as he needs to be and then come up and make the tackle. Really hard to exploit him in zone coverage. Jelani Tavai has been asked to be that guy. Last year, when people asked, why did Jelani Tavai get worse? Last year, where people went wrong is they kept trying to throw over his head when he was in shallow zones, and there wasn't really a whole lot of depth behind him. We've seen that this year where he's had a couple batted passes when guys try to throw just like a couple yards behind him. Where he struggled more is he's been asked to be that deep coverage defender. And that, with the fact they don't have a pass rush, with cover two, you need a pass rush, or else it gives the defense time to get downfield, and it really puts those coverage guys in tough positions. Because they don't have a whole lot of pass rush, it's put Jelani Tavai in more difficult positions when he has to drop, but also there's times where he's challenged horizontally, like against the Jets. You remember where he just kept getting killed on those like shake routes, where, yeah, you're testing him sideline to sideline, not behind him. That's going to put him in some tough positions. So that's been a big part of the cover two issues. And then in cover four, really the issue is they've just given up a bunch of touchdowns that really have affected the score. Not as many recently, but when you look at their issues, a lot of it has been the middle field open coverages or split safety. Now just going a little deeper into those numbers. Again, when you look at middle field close coverages, cover one, cover three, they're still top 10 in passer rating allowed, right? So they're still doing their thing. And a lot of that is man coverage when they're in obvious passing situations. But because they haven't been an elite run defense, and a lot of these good running backs can still get the number of yardage where they're staying on schedule, it's made it a lot tougher for the Patriots to say, hey, we're playing man coverage because we know what's going to happen, which is an advantage they had last season because nobody could run on them. Now, their success rate is bottom 5 when they go split field coverages. They're giving up conversions at a top 10 rate in terms of being bad. Explosive plays, which PFF categorizes as 15 or more yards. They've given up tied for the 5th most passing touchdowns from these coverages, which is obvious when you look at the tape. And then the highest passer rating in the NFL from these coverages, which once again, I talked about it. They're picking on linebackers. Sometimes on the back end, the coverage isn't perfect. They've given up a couple deep balls to posts. There was one Marcus Jones against the 49ers. Tight coverage, guy's going to make a play. Gonzo gave up a similar reception to Brian Thomas Jr. in London. Again, those guys are going to make plays. But when it comes to coverage, again, I mentioned the run defense and the effect that's going to have. Now, another one of the big differences with the defense this year compared to last, they're actually blitzing less. You would think from the eye test they're blitzing more because of the times they've dialed it up, they've gotten burned by it. But they're blitzing at a slightly lower rate. The biggest difference is they're getting even less pressure. So last year, the biggest difference was obviously this year and last year, they have a higher pressure rate when they do blitz. Last year, I think a big part of that was Christian Barmore. If you blitz, you send 5. a lot of the times it creates one-on-one matchups. Christian Barmore's pressure rate went from just below 10% to almost 13% last year when the Patriots blitzed. So that's where a lot of the production comes from. But you can see the success rate is lower and the pressure rate is lower. So when they're blitzing in the few times that they do, they're not getting home and they're not affecting the passer quite as much. So we talk about this defense and all the ways that they need to improve. The talent is an undeniable part of that, right? Because you don't have, your safeties playing every down. You don't have Christian Barmore being a game wrecker up front. Keon White's picked up some of the slack there, but he isn't as good as finishing plays as you saw with the Christian Barmore. So with me, that's a big part of it. But at the same time, when you look schematically, I think coming out of this bye, they've got to tone down the amount of split safety zones they play. That's a lot easier said than done, especially when you're playing quarterbacks that can just throw it down the sideline and kill you that way. But it's not doing them nearly as much good as I think what they wanted to do. I think they got to use more line games, rely less on blitzes and more on these stunts. So maybe you can try to scheme some pressure. I know they're doing that at a lower rate, but they're getting pressure at like almost double the same rate when they actually do use some line games and stunts like that. So schematically, they're spinning the dial more. It is not working. They're still very much a defense that thrives when they're playing middle field close coverages. Got to get back to that. Also just play fundamentally better overall. And in terms of players that they could maybe get next offseason, I think edge rusher has to be the big one. And I think also I wouldn't be surprised if they dip in and try to find a linebacker like a Christian Ellis type who's really good in coverage, but maybe has better instincts and can't get picked on quite as much.
Taylor, that was great work. I got nothing else to add. I got to keep my mouth shut for a good 5 minutes, and we wrap up the show, wrap up the week with that. Great job. Thanks for all the outlining the numbers there for us on the defense. They do have to improve one way or another. We'll see if they can do it before next season, whether it's players, whether it's scheme, whether it's potentially a change at defensive coordinator. We'll see what happens. But for now, 4 weeks left for the Patriots as they continue on their 2024 season. That's going to do it for our bye-week coverage. We'll have some more videos dropping on the channel later on this week from down in Foxboro with some report cards, some players we're looking to improve for the remainder of the season. So make sure you keep it here and check out all of that good stuff. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here. 1,000+ people here live on 4 p.m. on a Friday, too. You guys should all be going to have a nice cold one to start the weekend. I'm going to go do the same in a little while. So, again, thank you guys so much for taking the time out to watch myself and Taylor here. We'll be back next week for more coverage as the Patriots take on the Arizona Cardinals for Week 15. Until then, thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Yeah, it's funny. I used to stumble on that. I finally figured it out, and now it's the bye week, and I'm ruining the game. But take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We'll see everybody next time. Peace out, y'all.